Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kat and this is Catadactyl. So today is my second time trying to film this video because I recently taught myself how to do manual focus on my camera, and the first time I was just out of focus. Darn it. So hopefully this one goes a lot better. So today I am so excited because this video, I have been writing this list for a long time. It is Women in Wilderness, 12 books with badass female main characters. And the book that originally made me want to do this list was my absolute darling, and every book after that I thought sounded like my absolute darling, such as a female character that is battling against people in her life, and also it's set in the wilderness and there's some survival skills thrown in there, and she's just generally a badass. I was keeping a list and checking it twice, and eventually I got to a dozen books. Now 6 of them I have read, and I will talk about them first, and 6 of them I really want to read. And 2 of them, of the ones I want to read, are not even out yet. So we have a whole smattering of books to get into, so I'm just going to go ahead and jump right on into it. So the first book that I want to talk about is of course my absolute darling, which kind of inspired this whole idea. And in My Absolute Darling, we follow Turtle, who is a 14-year-old girl. She's kind of an outcast of her society. She doesn't really fit in to her school or her community. She doesn't really have many friends. What she does have is a lot of survival skills, because her father is kind of an end-of-the-world doomsday type man, and he teaches her a lot of skills, such as how to hunt, how to use guns and knives, and how to survive kind of off the grid when, you know, the whole world disintegrates and they need to do that. And not only is she isolated from others, but also the dynamics between her and her father are very taut and very messed up. So this book I just found amazing. It was one of my favorites last year. I was just blown away. I couldn't believe it was Gabriel Tallent's first novel. So I'm so glad I read it, and I really do recommend it. So the next one I'd like to talk about is The Wolf Road by Beth Lewis, and in this one we're following a girl named Elka who was abandoned in the woods as a child, and she got lost, and she was found and taken in by a man she calls Trapper. And he raises her, and they live off the grid, and they hunt for their food, and they kind of echo out a living alone in the wilderness of kind of Canada, Alaska, in a post-nuclear fallout world called the Big Stupid. That is until one day when Elka goes into town to trade furs, and she sees Trapper's face on a wanted sign. Turns out he is a murderer. So when she goes home to confront Trapper, he flees, and not only does she chase him, but so are government officials, and she's trying to find out who he is, where she's from, and how she could still salvage a life for herself. So this book was pretty awesome. I was rooting for her the entire time, and also there is definitely a wolf in this book, which anytime there's a wolf title, like, I'm there for it, and I'm just praying that there is a wolf somewhere. So I have never heard anyone talk about this book. I picked it up at a whim from an Australian bookstore. Like I said, it sounded like my absolute darling, so I just snapped it right on up. So the next one I would like to talk about is Sal by Mick Kitson, and in this one we are following Sal, and she is a young girl who has been planning to run away for over a year. So during that year, she has taken her mother's boyfriend's credit card and been buying survival gear secretly on Amazon. And she's been watching YouTube videos and reading books at the library so that she can learn how to survive in the wild. Eventually, when her plan is completely ready, she decides that it is time to rescue herself and her sister from the dire situation in which their mother has put them. So they escape into the Scottish Highlands, and it goes from there. So this book, the Scottish Highland imagery, was amazing. You also meet another character that is completely amazing. She has a back history in Europe from escaping during World War II. So I just found this book to be really not what I was expecting and exactly what I needed, like, at the same time. So yeah, it was great. So the next book I want to talk about is The Marsh King's Daughter by Dionne, and I know that I've been dragging this book for a while, but I wanted to talk about it here because the person I buddy read it with really loved it. So I thought that makes it mentionable. So in The Marsh King's Daughter, we're following a girl whose father just escaped from prison, and that's a huge problem because in childhood, she was actually the reason why her father got caught. And the father is really dangerous. He kidnapped her mother, took her to an abandoned marsh house, and basically held her hostage and raped her and begot the daughter who turned him in. So When she hears her father has escaped, she knows that she is the only one who is competent enough in the marshes to hunt him down and bring him back to justice. If that doesn't sound amazing, I don't know what does. I had problems, however, with the way in which the story was told, the narrative style I wasn't a fan of. However, take my opinion with like a heaping cup of salt, because the person I read it with loved it. So one of us hated it, one of us loved it, so I thought it bore mentioning on this list because it absolutely falls under the category of badass female main character with survival skills. So yeah, Marsh King's Daughter. So next, I would say, is the classic non-fiction for a woman in the wilderness, and it is Wild by Cheryl Strayed. And in this one, we're following Cheryl, who decides to hike the Pacific Crest Trail after her life is largely falling to pieces. She decides to just cold turkey cut everything and hike this massive endeavor, which she is totally unprepared for. But there's just something about like her chutzpah and like her bronze balls that just is amazing to read. It's not that she doesn't struggle, she definitely has a lot of struggle bus in this book, but I just found it really inspiring and I really love this book. It is super hyped. There's also a movie starring Reese Witherspoon, but I found the book insanely inspiring, and I want to hike the Pacific Crest Trail one day. Definitely check it out if you're looking for like the non-fiction best of women in the wilderness books. Alrighty, and the last book on this list, which I have read, is The Great Alone by Kristin and Hanna. I finished this a few days ago. So in The Great Alone, we follow Lenny, who is a 13-year-old girl whose father is a POW, and he has really bad PTSD, flashbacks, and nightmares, which drive him to act in certain ways, and he decides that in order to get a hold of himself and remove his family from kind of the strictures of normal society, he's going to move them to a remote outpost in Alaska. So they move there, and wouldn't you know it, half of the year it's insanely dark and the weather's horrible, all of which trigger the father's PTSD flashbacks. The scenery is amazing. All of the life in Alaska and the small community feel is there. Survival skills 100% in this book, and very dark stuff also in this book for sure. I'm a huge fan of this book. I could not put it down. I read it in the bath for a few hours, so much so that my fingers were all pruny. So I absolutely adore this book and I really recommend it. Welcome to the halftime show. This is where I drink my drink and try not to die because it's so hot in this room right now. So yeah. Delicious pineapple. So the next 6 books are books that I haven't read but I really, really want to. And let's go ahead and start off this list with one that I really, really want to read because my aunt and my uncle have both read it, couldn't put it down. They said it was amazing, and it's Wolves of Winter by Tyrell Johnson. Lynn McBride lives in the Canadian Yukon after a nuclear fallout event, and she is eking out a living on her own, learning how to survive in the wilderness, and she finally thinks she has just the amount of survival skills to make it when Jax comes upon the scene and shatters everything that she knew. So this to me is absolutely gonna be amazing, and I already have 2 glowing reviews from my aunt and my uncle, and I have never once had similar reading taste to my uncle, so if it can get both of them on board, I'm like so ready for it. And also it'll make like a great family Skype book chat, so I'm so ready for this book. And next is I Am Still Alive by Kate Alice Marshall. In this one we follow Jessi, who hasn't seen her off-the-grid father for over 10 years, until one day when she and her mother get in a very, very bad car accident and her mother passes away. And then Jessi is left to track down her father and move in with him into the cabin in the wilderness. Until the past comes calling and the cabin is burned down and Jessi must flee into the wilderness to survive. So this one I think is less about her having survival skills and more like she has to get her shit together and get survival skills in order to not die in the wilderness. So I am so ready for it. I, again, am really looking forward to like every one of these books, but this one just happens to have my little sister's name, which is Jess, so that should be interesting. I hope she does not die. The next one up is History of Wolves by Emily Fridlund, and in this one we follow 14-year-old Madeline, who lives in the remote woods of northern Minnesota with her family, and she is kind of an outcast. Her family doesn't really get on with the community well, so she kind of fixates on a beautiful girl in her class and also one of her teachers. But when the teacher is charged of having child pornography, Madeline goes down a dark spiral. And I also know that a family moves into them next to the lake, and she's not used to having someone there, and things with that family also take a turn for the worst. So I think that this is going to be a super dark, very haunting novel, and I believe I'm going to put it on my August TBR because 2 counts of dark, count me in. That was a horrible pun. Oh well. So bad. So next up on this list is the book that I think has the best name fitted to this list, and it is The Word for Women is Wilderness by Abby Andrews. In this one we're following Erin, who I believe is 19 years old. She sees that most of the people who are like wilderness explorers, like Bear Grylls, are men and they're getting all of the attention. So she decides to set out around the world to prove that women can be as equally adventurous as men. And her journey takes her across the Arctic Circle, the North American continent, and Denali in Alaska. So along the way, she talks about a lot of events other than just her own travels, such as global warming and impacts on economy and the world and globalization and, you know, forest deforestation. So I think that there are a lot of important arguments for this book. I really wanted to read this when it came out a while ago. I couldn't find it anywhere. It's not on Kindle, or at least the time I tried to read it, it wasn't released on Kindle. So if anyone knows where I can get it, other than paying insane shipping costs from the UK to Japan, I would be so highly appreciative, like so appreciative. Thank you. So the next book is out August 7th. So in this one we follow Mari, who is very much a girl online. She has a huge online presence and she has a lot of followers, but she realizes that the way she presents herself is not true to how she actually is in real life. So she decides to expose the real her and talk about how fake her online existence is. And when she does, she loses all her followers, gets a bunch of backlash, and her own best friend kind of drops out of this hike that they were planning to go on together. So instead, Mary decides to hike the John Muir Trail on her own. So I think that this is kind of like a more modern retelling of Wild, basically 20 years later. And I can't wait to read it. It's been on my most anticipated release for August list. I will leave that video linked down below. It had a bunch of awesome releases. And yeah, if any of you guys have read it, please let me know. I've seen some advanced reader copies and I'm really excited to see what people think. I hope it's really good. And the last book on this list is Leave No Trace by Mindy Mejia, and this is out September 4th. So in this one, we follow Maya, who is an assistant language therapist, when she is called into a case. So 10 years ago, hiking in the Minnesotan wilderness, a father and son were lost without a trace and they were not found. Until a decade later, very recently, when the son was found ransacking a outfitter store. And she is called into the case to communicate with him because he is acting essentially feral. So he takes her through a journey into the wilderness to find out what happened to him and his father and why they vanished in the first place. So again, this one isn't necessarily a woman with survival skills in the wilderness. This is more like a woman and wilderness in the same story. So I am really intrigued to read it. I hope it's amazing. And that finishes up this awesome list of books that I really, really want to read. If you guys have read any of them, please do let me know. I am so excited for all of them. I really, really love strong female main characters. I mean, like, you guys know that if you watch my channel at all. Which if you do, thank you. Yeah, and I also love survival skills in the wilderness. I have always really liked being in the wilderness, and I don't know if I have like camping survival skills. Like, I would probably die. I'd like to think I wouldn't, but I like probably would. But I do have survival skills for scuba diving, so I don't know, if I was ever caught in a water misadventure, I think I'd be fine. But anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up or hit the subscribe button. That would be awesome. I hope you are having the loveliest of days. And also, let me know which of these books you are most excited to read. Also, of the 6 that I haven't read yet, if you would like to buddy read any, let me know. I am so pumped. Alright, I'll talk to you later. Toodles! Bye!